We are neither neutral.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the global top headlines this hour. Russia says its forces have taken control of the strategic city of Kupiansk in northeastern Ukraine after weeks of heavy fighting. The claim comes after previously contested control with Ukraine earlier, saying it had recaptured parts of the city. The United States offers NATO-style security guarantees to Ukraine as talks with European and Ukrainian officials show progress towards ending the war. US envoys warn the offer is time-limited, with no agreement yet on territorial concessions. Thailand says Cambodia must be the first to announce a ceasefire to halt more than a week of deadly border clashes. Bangkok says Cambodia, which it calls the aggressor, must cooperate sincerely in border demining efforts. Philippine immigration says the father and son behind Australia's deadly Bondi beach attack spent most of November in the country. Officials say the father entered the Philippines as an Indian national before returning to Australia. Los Angeles police charged the son of filmmaker Rob Reiner with the murder of his parents after they are found dead at their home. Authorities say the 32-year-old suspect is in custody without bail as the investigation continues. President Trump sues the BBC for defamation over edited footage of a January the 6th speech he says misrepresented his words. Trump seeks up to $10 billion in damages after the BBC admits an editing error but denies any legal basis for the claim. The US military says it carries out strikes on 3 vessels in international waters in the Eastern Pacific, killing 8 people in the process. US Southern Command says intelligence shows the boats are operating along known narco-trafficking routes. Police renew a manhunt for the gunman who kills 2 students and injures 7 others in a classroom shooting at Brown University. Officers go door to door for surveillance footage after releasing a person of interest previously detained. We start this hour in Eastern Europe, and the US military says that it has carried out strikes on 3 boats it has accused of trafficking drugs in the Pacific Ocean, killing 8 people in the process. The US Southern Command posted footage of the strikes on social media and said the vessels were engaged in narco-trafficking and were transiting along known narco-trafficking routes. More than 20 vessels in the Pacific and the Caribbean have been targeted in recent months, killing at least 90 people as part of President Donald Trump's escalating campaign against gangs he accuses of transporting drugs in the region. Meanwhile, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, in an interview with US media, says that President Nicolas Maduro is welcome to come to Belarus should he leave office, but that no such discussions have been held with the Venezuelan leader. Lukashenko said that a conflict with Venezuela would only result in Venezuelans joining together in support of Maduro, and also noted that he does not believe that Venezuela is responsible for the inflow of drugs into the United States. Joining us now is Keith Vaz. He is a former British minister and he joins us live from London. Keith, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, 90 people now, over 90, have now been reported killed in these US strikes on what Washington called drug boats on this well-known narco-trafficking corridor. This is ringing many alarm bells for rights organizations, for international lawyers. Could you tell us a little about the problems which these operations are facing in regards to international law is concerned?
Good morning, Thomas from London. These are alarming escalations of the conflict that appears to be brewing between America and Venezuela. It's right, of course, that all countries should come together in order to prevent drug trafficking in this way. But whether the best course of action is simply to bomb what we can see are unidentified ships, vessels, going through what is described as narco routes is something that goes beyond the norms of international law. So I think that we will find that this is indeed a breach of international law, but there are very few countries who are prepared to stand up these days and say this at the United Nations. American military power is awesome. So when it is deployed in this way in America's backyard, it seems to be unchecked. So what we will probably see is a movement among South American countries where they will start to protest in the loudest possible terms. I think what the White House needs to do is it needs to go to the UN and provide clear and unequivocal evidence of what it has received. But I think at the moment we don't even have manifests as to who's on these boats. You can't just indiscriminately go off and bomb any boat that happens to be sailing in a particular way. And if they seek to stop this, and the best way to do it is through a dialogue with the Venezuelan government, not by bombing people and killing people in this way, then they should do so by opening channels with Nicolas Maduro. And that is the way to deal with it. And unless it's done, there is going to be a serious problem.
Keith, how does this campaign differ legally and operationally from the failed war on drugs of previous decades?
Well, what we've seen in the past is people who are Mr. and Mrs. Bigwigs being arrested if they ever arrive on US territory. We've also seen the seizure of assets in the United States and the tracing of money. When I was the chairman of the Home Affairs Committee in the House of Commons in London, we did go to Colombia to look at this issue of South American drugs and found out that people were actually hiring boats and traveling all the way across the Atlantic and arriving in Europe. We didn't, as a country, go along bombing these boats. Even though when you got to the end, actually, the boats were disposed of because the value of the boat was much less than the value of the drugs. President Trump is right. This is a big, big issue, the importation of drugs into America. But the way to deal with it is not to breach international law. Two wrongs do not make a right. You have to go to the Venezuelans. It's very similar, in a sense, to what's happening between Britain and France over boats coming to us. We don't go along and bomb boats, do we? We enter a dialogue with the French to try and stop the boats coming over, and that's what he's got to do. If these were riderless boats and just consisted of cargo, that would be a different matter. But 90 people have been killed. Who are these 90 people? What are they doing on these boats, and how can this be traced? Because even if you destroy one boat, another one's going to come along. You can't bomb every single boat in the Pacific, can you? That's the problem that Donald Trump faces.
Keith, geopolitically, of course, Venezuela has traditional allies. You've got the likes of Russia and China, those two of which have seemed to have gone quiet. However, due to the fact that the United States historically is known for meddling in Latin American affairs pretty frequently throughout history, how do you think the rest of the continent is looking at this situation?
Well, it's a very good question because we've just had another election in Chile. But I think even the Chileans and those who support, and the Argentinian leader who supports Donald Trump, will kind of step back from this view that you should be indiscriminately bombing a particular country's, well, it doesn't belong to Venezuela, but on the open high seas, that you should be bombing these sea vessels. I think even they will step back because this kind of activity is tantamount to lawlessness, and therefore you have to be very careful in voicing concern. I mean, what people are after, of course, is the massive oil wealth of Venezuela. As with Iraq and the Middle East, it's not been done to a poor country. It's been done to a very rich country that happens to be poor in the sense that its people have not benefited from the way in which oil has been sold and developed in Venezuela. That's the problem of the Venezuelan government. You and I, Thomas, we don't have a vote in this. We're not Venezuelans. And neither is Donald Trump. So if he wants to try and sort this problem out, it is much more effective to open a dialogue with Venezuela and try and, instead of shutting them out, bringing them in and saying, look, this is your problem. This is what Santos did in Colombia. He cracked down. It was his decision to take on the FARC and all the other groups that were involved in these kinds of activities. And as a result of it, this is what has happened. So you can't just go along doing this. But as you say, at this moment in time, the world is in turmoil, Thomas. There are people, shootings in Australia, deaths in Gaza, trouble in Africa. What we need now is clear leadership, and no one is actually giving that leadership. And of course, you have Ukraine as well, which is another problem. So these are big issues, but indiscriminately bombing vessels of this kind, simply not acceptable under international law.
Yeah, indeed. Keith, Vaz, as always, an absolute pleasure to talk to you and have you on the programme. Thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. We now move on, and we have some breaking news coming in from Africa. And a suicide bomber has struck a military position in northeast Nigeria near the border with Cameroon. Security and local defence sources have said at least 5 soldiers were killed in the attack in Fergie, near the town of Pulka in Borno State. Nigeria's military has confirmed injuries but denied any fatalities, and local witnesses say several bodies were seen at the scene and victims were taken to hospital. The incident highlights the ongoing insecurity in the region, which has faced repeated militant attacks. We move over next to Australia, of course, and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on Tuesday visited Ahmed Al-Ahmed at a Sydney hospital, praising his bravery after he charged at a gunman and seized a rifle during Sunday's mass shooting at Bondi Beach. Albanese has described Ahmed as representing the best of our country and said that Australia would not allow itself to be divided. Let's take a listen in.
A great honour to meet Ahmed Al-Ahmed. He is a true Australian hero. He's very humble. He went through his thought processes as he saw the atrocities unfold. He had gone to Bondi with friends and relatives. He was trying to get a cup of coffee. Simple as that, and found himself at a moment where people were being shot in front of him. He decided to take action, and his bravery is an inspiration for all Australians. He is a very humble man. Tomorrow he will undergo further surgery. His mother and father are here visiting him from Syria, and I was able to meet them as well. They're very proud parents. He, at a moment where we have seen evil perpetrated, he shines out as an example of the strength of humanity. We are a brave country. Ahmed Al-Ahmed represents the best of our country. We will not allow this country to be divided. That is what the terrorists seek. We will unite, we will embrace each other, and we'll get through this. Thank you very much.
The shooting was Australia's deadliest mass attack in nearly 30 years. 16 people were killed, including one of the alleged gunmen. Dashcam footage circulating online showed a man in a lavender shirt tackling a shooter and wrestling away a long-barreled weapon near a parked car. Hundreds of people gathered to lay flowers and pay tribute at a makeshift memorial near the Bondi Pavilion where the incident happened. The memorial was created to honour the victims and those wounded and to show solidarity with the Jewish community following the attack. Joining us now is Andrea Lucidi. He's a war reporter and he joins us from Lugansk. Andrea, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, this was a horrific attack. Obviously, the man who was on video, went viral, disarming one of the attackers, was a Muslim man. The echoes on social media and throughout society, as Anthony Albanese said, what would the danger have been if this positive didn't come out of this situation following this attack on Bondi Beach just a couple of days ago now?
Well, what's happened in Bondi Beach is, of course, terrible, and it's one of the most terrible massacre in Australia since the 90s, since 1996, if I could remember. And of course, we cannot call this event as different as a terrorism. This is a terrorism. I will say that also in Russia, this event have a big impact on the social media because in Russia there are a lot of Jews. There is a big Jewish community. And also the Jewish people are part of the religious council of the Russian Federation. For this reason, this event had a big impact also here. And also a spokeswoman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Maria Zakharova, told some words about what's happened and remarks that Russia will fight uncompromising against terrorism in all its form and manifestations. And also because some Russian nationals were involved and were among the victims of this terror attack. I would say also that the position of Francesca Albanese that visit this brave man that disarms one gunman in Bondi Beach is very important because also the people that sustain the Palestinian cause recognize that terrorism against Jews, terrorism against simple people is not helpful for the Palestinian cause. And we need to remember also that also Arab countries like Syria, Lebanon, were fighting against the Islamic State. And I don't know if there are some news about it, but at the first step, the people that are involved in this terrorist attack say that they are alliance with Islamic State. So if this will be confirmed, we have another proof that the Islamistic fundamentalism, the Islamistic terrorism is already operative against people, and it's not helpful for the Palestinian cause or for a peace in the Middle East.
Yes, indeed. Andrea, do stay with us as we have further updates, this time coming out of the United Kingdom. And Britain's MI6 chief has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of deliberately dragging out negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. In her first public address, MI6 head Blase Metroweli described Russia as an aggressive and revisionist power, saying Moscow is trying to subjugate Ukraine while harassing NATO members. She said Russia is using tactics just below the threshold of war, including cyber attacks, sabotage, arson and drones, buzzing airports and military bases. Metroweli questioned Putin's commitment to peace and said the human cost continues to rise. She stressed that Britain's support for Ukraine remains enduring and that pressure on Moscow will continue. However, Russia denies the accusations and any plans to threaten NATO. Listen in to the chief of MI6 in the United Kingdom.
We all continue to face the menace of an aggressive, expansionist and revisionist Russia seeking to subjugate Ukraine and harass NATO. I find it harrowing that hundreds of thousands have died, with the toll mounting every day because of Putin's historical distortions and his compromised desire for respect. He is dragging out negotiations and shifting the cost of war onto his own population. But Putin should be in no doubt. Our support.
Andrea Lucidi joins us once again. The new MI6 chief accuses Putin of deliberately dragging out peace talks. From a strategic view, what does Russia gain by prolonging this war? Of course, the Kremlin has denied ceasefire again and again. In comparison to when Putin was echoing that he did want peace, why is now any different?
Chief of MI6 is a little bit strange because the MI6 was involved in a lot of operation with the Ukrainian side. For example, the last one was the plot to steal a MiG-31 and detonate a Kinjal missile in the NATO territory. So this position is, I can say, very strange. And some days ago, the Ministry of Defense of United Kingdom confirmed that one soldier of the British Army was died in Ukraine during the service. So was the first official that was died in Ukraine in service. And what can I say? That I don't see this situation because now Volodymyr Zelensky begin to be more available about the Russian request. Yesterday, Zelensky in the meeting in Berlin said that for him it's possible to renounce to the joining in NATO if the NATO country can guarantee some security like Article 5, but not to think how many human lives cost this for Zelensky, for Ukraine. Yes. How many lives Zelensky sacrificed for this result? Yeah.
She says that Moscow is operating just under the threshold of war, of course referring to the drone incursions into NATO airspace that have been occurring, alleged sabotage, alleged meddling in elections by the Russian government. Is it hard to not say otherwise?
Well, I repeat myself, the position of MI6 is strange because they are very involved in the war, and the Russian secret service and the Russian security services are very careful for observe the operation of MI6 in the Ukrainian territory against Russia. I think that this is only politics, this is a declaration of the chief of MI6 that need to be done because they need to justify also what they are doing in Ukraine and all this support to Ukraine for the prolongation of the war. I would like to remember that in April 2022, the Ukrainian government were very, very close to sign an agreement for have a ceasefire and to reach a peace. But the support, unlimited support from Great Britain, in particular after a visit of the Premier Minister Boris Johnson in Kiev, changed this position of Kiev. And since April 2022, Zelensky started to speak from another position and said about final military victory, etc. So if the United Kingdom change the position and start to speak about the possibility of peace, maybe also the Ukrainian government will accept the peace.
Andrea Lucidi, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme as always. We now move on, and Taiwan's military readiness has been underlined amid raising tensions with China. Taiwan's armed forces are described as capable of responding rapidly to any sudden Chinese attack. All military units are said to be able to operate under a decentralized command structure, allowing combat missions to be carried out without waiting for orders from central command. It has been noted that China's military activities around Taiwan have been stepped up year by year, with nearly daily operations described as part of a grey zone pressure campaign. These actions have been characterized as drills that could quickly shift from exercises into active combat. It has also been said that China has been practicing attack scenarios against Taiwan and extending naval operations further into the Pacific, including towards Australia and New Zealand. Meanwhile, Beijing's sovereignty claims over Taiwan have been rejected by Taipei, it being reiterated that Taiwan's future can only be decided by its people. Okay, we move on once again, and the United States has suspended a technology deal it struck with Britain earlier this year, which was intended to boost ties in artificial intelligence, quantum computing and civil nuclear engineering. As per reports, the United States suspended the deal last week, with US President Donald Trump's administration pushing for Britain's concessions in areas of trade outside the tech partnership. Both countries agreed the tech prosperity deal over artificial intelligence, quantum computing and civil nuclear energy during Trump's visit to Britain in September. The US is Britain's largest trading partner, and its big tech companies have already invested billions of dollars in their UK operations. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.